one thing that stops me doing furniture and DIY projects more than anything else is the weather. So it's time for us to build a workshop right here on the driveway. Right, I think we could stop that now.
Okay.
Hey, Pete here from Northern Works. It can be pretty daunting planning a big DIY project, especially something that's going to be as visible from the street like a driveway workshop is. But today I'm going to show you a few of the tools and approaches that I use when I'm planning a big DIY project, and hopefully it'll help your next project be a success. Way before I start designing, I spend time looking around for inspiration. For a workshop, that's things like looking at other workshop builds on YouTube, searching Instagram for garage or workshop inspiration, and if I'm honest, I spend far too much time looking at other people's houses as I'm driving by. And what I'm really looking for are, what are the different styles of workshops that are out there? How do different people build them? What are the construction techniques? How are they laid out? How do they work with the houses that are already there? And I'm trying to get a sense of what I want my workshop to look and feel like. I also spend quite a lot of time looking at different materials. So in this case, I'm thinking about what are all of the different ways that I could construct a workshop. And I spent most of my time this time looking at roof options. At this point, it's really important to let yourself look beyond what you would normally look at. But remember to have a think about what already works in your context. For example, we live in a 1930s semi-detached house. There's thousands of these all around the UK. And as much as I would love to have some like striking, angular, modernist thing like protruding from the side of our house, on our street, that probably isn't going to sit well. And sometimes it's better to go with what you know will fit in rather than having a battle over something like a driveway workshop. And then the last aspect of research is to get the sense of what you want balanced against actually what's possible. And for that, I like to play a game of requirements and constraints. To be fair, it's not actually a game, it's just two lists, but it goes like this. You make a list of all your requirements and you make a list of all your constraints. Requirements are the things that you want. You don't have to worry about what's realistic at this point. Just write down all of the things that you want from this DIY project. So for me, that is lots of space. I want to get flexible use out of it, so it's not necessarily always a workshop. I want it to be at least dry enough that I can store wood in there. I need it to be simple enough that I can build it. I want to have light and power in there. It needs to be secure, and I want to still be able to get in and out of the garden through the workshop. Next, you want to list your constraints. And now this is where things get a bit more realistic, especially if you've gone a bit wild with some of your requirements. Probably the most important place to start looking for your constraints is actually to just look at your site. Actually, let me show you around the site. I've got to fit the roof around these big waste pipes. The runoff drain runs right by the fence here. I've got a kitchen window and this other down pipe that I need to give clearance for. And the whole thing is on this pretty ridiculous slope. And as well as the site, you've also got things like permitted development rules. For example, I'm restricted on the height that I can build to at both the wall and the edge of the property. Cost and your budget, your skills or the skills that any of the people that you know have got, and then access to tools that you might have. And then another really important one is other people. For example, I know that the drainage from the roof is going to run straight off into my neighbour's garden. So I need to make extra sure that the drainage is bomb-proof. Otherwise, I'm just going to annoy them. And once you've got your lists, you can sit down and start designing. So one thing to remember is that good design is all about meeting people's requirements and constraints. So I can't even start this step until I've got my lists. I usually start by sketching on paper, and at this point I'm just trying to get a sense of what's going to work in the space and the different visual styles that I like. Once I've honed in on something that I think will work, I'll then start to add in some of the details like the permitted development heights or where the drain pipes are going. Once I feel like the general style and shape is working, then I'll do a bit of the detail of working out how the thing will actually be constructed. So how is this thing going to stay up? How is the roof going to be attached? How am I going to attach it to the walls so that it's strong? Most of these questions are then followed by frantic Googling to work out what the answers are for a DIY. Do I go for rafters or do I go for trusses? Can I attach posts to existing fence posts? These are the sorts of questions that I'm answering at this point. So once I'm pretty confident with my rough design, I'll then get serious about materials again, and I'll take all of that research that I did about my materials and I'll start to apply them to specific aspects. So if I choose this type of roofing, what do I need in place to hold it up? Things like that. Once I've got that final detail, I'll then start doing things in 3D, and I like to use SketchUp. I make models of each of the different component parts of the build, and then I'll build a sort of digital twin of the final project in SketchUp. This allows me to look at things like final dimensions. It helps me to test joinery and make sure that I actually know how I'm going to build things. And it also lets me see where relief cuts for things like drain pipes should be. It lets me see what's actually buildable and which parts are just a bit mental. And I'll normally come back to this model quite a lot over the next few days, tweaking things, doing a bit of extra research where I need to, often simplifying the model quite a lot, until I've got something that's in good enough detail for me to be able to move on to planning. Now this used to be the step that I found the most paralyzing in big projects, because I was worried that I was going to order the wrong thing or not order enough materials, or I'd get started on a project and then I wouldn't be able to afford to finish it. But the good news is, if you go through the first two steps in enough detail, then the planning stage actually becomes a piece of cake. Essentially what I do is I go through my 3D model and I count up all of the different components. I can count up all the different 2x4s, I can count all of the screws, I can count all of the extras like adhesives, and I bring them all into a massive spreadsheet that has a link to the supplier. It has the actual detail of what it is that I'm buying. I'll have the quantity in there and the price, and also I'll make sure that I'll document the lead times. And this just makes ordering everything so easy, because I can just click, click, click all through the links, add them to my basket, and I know that it's done. At this point, I also spend time planning the actual build sequence and how long I think each thing is going to take. And the reason I do that is I don't have dry storage yet. So I don't want to order wood and have it lying around in the rain potentially for a long time. So I need to look for a window in my life when I've got time and when the weather's good, order the materials so that they arrive so that I can then crack on. And I know that I've got the time to actually kind of finish things off. And this is why it's important for me to know the lead times and delivery times of all of my materials. So for example, I need space to store the roof sheets, so I need to know that they're going to arrive after I finish the framing. So that all might sound like a load of faff for some of you, but I've found that the more time and effort I put into the design and planning phases, the actual build is way less stressful. There's nothing better sometimes than raiding your parts bin and just starting to build something without a real plan. And I think that's really essential for creative exploration. But when it comes to something big like a set of gates or a roof that's going to be attached to the side of my house, I definitely do not want to be getting halfway through the project and only then be asking, is this rafter strong enough for this roof? Anyway, I hope you found this useful. Give it a like, help some other folks find it. And you can decide for yourself if this faff was worth it by watching the build video. See you again.